So about 5 years ago, I started thinking about existing state technology and the the convergence of a couple of different technologies with a core emphasis on miniaturization. And if you go to my YouTube page and type hospital without the Z, then you can review some of my original thoughts on this topic. But as I started learning more about the developments in different areas, particularly the developments in machine learning, I started thinking about the convergence of machine learning with other developments, including but not limited to robotics, materials, genetics, and other areas. So from my vantage point, it seems um, very possible to enable a quality infrastructure for healthcare on a worldwide basis, realizing the fact that this system will be heavily reliant upon automation. So I won't go into all the details. If you search for health, hospital, or health care, then you will come across the different the content I've put together related to this topic, some of which may not be, well, AI safety, AI machine learning could be very beneficial in the domain of healthcare, but at the same time, that's not really on topic. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to unshare for a second, then I'm going to reshare again because I just want to go in full screen mode. And what I'm now going to do is I will share ideas for hospitals that are 3D printed or hospital in a box. And I feel this is an idea or a general area, not that it's my idea. I feel there are general set of areas that all humans can and should collaborate upon because our collective existence and the quality of our life depends upon it. And I think that is the seed we should be planting. So without getting into too much on that side, first, what I have done historically is to start looking at some of the technology trends. And I won't be talking about each one of these books in detail. You should, if you are interested. So I think I should share that sometimes when you share the kind of dream that I've shared, some people don't take that seriously, but I don't personally take offense, but I would encourage anyone who may be skeptical to read the books, review the evidence and the data that has been collected. And if then you are of a mindset or if you think to the contrary, then that's another thing. But there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the world keeps getting better and it's on a path towards abundance. So, I am still open to criticism and skepticism, but I would encourage you to read the Zero Margin in random order, the Zero Marginal Cost Society by Jeremy Rifkin, whereby as a product or service develops what is called a step towards economies of scale, the cost to produce that product and service starts plummeting towards close to zero. Not exactly zero, but close to zero. Next, Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think by Dr. Peter Diamandis. This book was probably published 2022, probably a decade ago, if not longer. And most of the predictions in the back of the book are either coming true or they are on track to come true. So read the book, and go line by line with the research that has been highlighted toward the back of the book. And then, if you believe that uh, these claims are to the world is not on a path towards abundance, then we can have a discussion about it. But read the books. The same with The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. And this book has the actual data that is highlighted with a keen focus on the exponential growth that we're seeing in a lot of different areas, in computation, in network throughput, in the cost to sequence a genome, how that's plummeted exponentially, and a lot of other stats, numbers that posit that we're seeing incredible progress in a lot of different areas. This is not an exhaustive list. In addition to the books, the quote from Mr. Bill Gates comes to mind, that there will be no more poor countries by the year 2025. As well, from the Future of Life Institute, that 90% of the scientists that have ever lived are alive today. That is today. That is the proportion of scientists that have ever lived throughout the course of the human existence. Definitely during the course of the human civilization, the way we understand record keeping is done from the Sumerians till now. And that is right now. So think about how many scientists and technologists and doctors are going to be coming online or connected to the world within the next 10 years, particularly from large developing regions like India, China, parts of Africa, all over Asia, all over South America, and the developed world at that. Because the topic was a 3D printed hospital or hospital in a box, realizing that we're talking about a facility that is quality in a very high sense of the word, a very high standard imaginable. And this is just a slide to showcase what 3D printing is. And I found a free video on the internet. So that's the only free video I could find, one of the few. So it's from the US Department of Energy. But as you saw in the video, you can just find that video directly if you want. Instead of the traditional means of manufacturing something, you make a object line by line. And so the patents for commercial 3D printing expired a while ago, probably 2 decades now. I'm not really sure. Definitely a decade and a half, I would think. And ever since the patents expired, we've seen tremendous growth in this area. And so what's now happening is that we are beginning to see the emergence of larger structures through which you could 3D print an entire building. And this was definitely on my radar because I've always thought about starting a housing company, because that's an area that affects me a lot. And I cannot afford to buy a $500,000 house. And when I looked at the stats, this is a super chronic problem on our planet with 1.6 billion individuals on the planet who cannot live in a, we're living in housing structures that are not stable, which includes the number of individuals on the planet who are homeless. So I've thought about that, but to come back to the idea, this was me talking to somebody on Clubhouse, and the idea of a 3D printed hospital came up. So this is a older picture. It's on the internet, and there are companies active again who are 3D printing housing structures. This one was printed somewhere in the Middle East. I forget the exact country, but as you may see from the page, it's just a sample of some of the companies active in this space. Shifting gears, more recently, the United States government, I'm a Canadian, which live in North America, lots of friends all over the North America. The United States government recently passed well, I don't know how the laws are passed. I don't know if this is a law, but the ARPA-H or ARPA Health Institute has been created under NIH, which is the National Institute of Health. And I've not reviewed their FAQ, but I read the PR newswire, and it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of breakthroughs are going to come out of ARPA-H. So if anyone's familiar with the other ARPA agencies, rest assured, amazing stuff happens. I don't know how the innovation is structured within the framework of the ARPA institutions, but I can't even imagine what's going to come out of ARPA. It's very exciting news. So going back to the cost and to the topic of 3D printing, I was thinking about the CapEx, and you have CapEx that is involved with putting in the rebar, and like there's a fair bit of. What if all of that could simply be replaced with 3D printing, making use of materials that are safe, quality, as well as materials that have protection against fire and inclement weather and natural disasters. So I started thinking of some ideas to make this happen. I won't go into the details. And I am thinking, though, that this could be a endeavor that could help bring a lot of amazing institutions together and the world's health institutions together. Health, food, water, education, or at least primary education, and secondary are areas, and other areas. These are some of the areas that we should collaborate on. And one of my acquaintances named Dmitry, a Russian Ukrainian individual, he has this idea of actual regions whereby we could collaborate on some of these issues and possibly more. But health would be definitely one of the areas where we can collaborate. I'm not saying all the intellectual property should be in the public domain. There's already tons of intellectual property specific relating to the domain of primary healthcare that I think we should create avenues through which people have more hope and healing, in the words of John Marlowe. So right now, we got to enable institutions that provide that care and healing so that people have more hope. So these are just some standard set of ideas, just to some additional ideas through Awakening Health. I won't play the video, but Sophia, a lot of groundbreaking work has happened with Sophia, and it just keeps getting better every year that I observe Sophia from Hanson Robotics. And I just wonder how this could be deployed in order to help provide better healthcare facilities. And this is more recent through engineered parts in robots known as Anuka. And my personal prediction is that within 15 years, plus minus, possibly 8 years at the least, it may start getting quite difficult to tell the difference between a human and a robot. And I'm not gonna get into the debate of the conscious experience, but with regards to the functioning of the movements of the limbs and the emotional expressions, facial expressions and whatnot, and perhaps even the texture of the skin, uh, it may become increasingly difficult to tell a difference between a Android in a not necessarily in a Google sense of the word imaginable, because Google has that operating system, but I mean Android, going back to the classical definition of an Android. It might become difficult to tell an Android from a human. And so we should leverage this phenomena, for lack of a better word, through more hope and healing. There's also other resources that you see at the bottom of this slide, including but not limited to, as it says, but also and amongst others. So there's some resources. I saw this Israeli American technology, which is amazing for automating cardiology scans and possibly other scans. Vobot I've personally used, I'm a big fan of, does not replace a trained evidence-based practitioner, but it's a great assist in my opinion. Obviously, OpenAI overall, not a healthcare company, but could play a key role in my opinion. And obviously, University of Southern California Institute of Creative Technologies, which I've looked into in the past. So this dream can happen because we're heading towards what some are calling the second machine age. And one of the things I learned after reading this book is that when you pair human intelligence with a machine intelligence, then the outcome is really good, and you get the best of both worlds. Again, the goal is not to replace humans, but is to eliminate the boring, repetitive, unsafe, dull work and help enable quality and well-paying jobs. And based on this video from 9 years ago, Technology Jobs and the Future of Work, it seemed like a lot of the folks on the panel were of the opinion that the most jobs in the future are going to be created in the domains of caregiving and healthcare. So it makes total sense to enable more quality, well-paying jobs in these areas. Overall, the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities. And as of right now, half the world lacks access to essential health services. And this is what we should focus on. Not to make tons and tons of money and become a trillionaire, but if you end up becoming a billionaire as a result of providing healthcare to a lot of people, I think, well, within reason. I won't get into the specifics. Like my personal motivation is not to enable healthcare to become rich, but my motivation is to see people not suffer in any unnecessary way. A couple of years ago, like this is 2017, I was struggling financially, and I had to get I thought I had a tooth infection. It turns out it was a root, what's it called? A wisdom tooth. And so I had to use my credit card in order to get my wisdom extracted. And it was painful. It was actually physically painful, but I was trying to call the University of Toronto dentistry school to see if they could do it on a subsidized rate. And I went to the hospital. They said, this is a dentist issue. We don't deal with it. You got to go to the dentist. And I was thinking, if I couldn't afford this, I would have, I don't know what I would have done. Well, I got a job after that, and I had dental coverage. But for the 3 wisdom tooth that I had to get extracted. I had to pay for it out of my pocket, and it put a little bit of dent in my leftover savings. Well, it depleted them. But then I was thinking, like, same for healthcare. I don't. I'm going to refrain from commenting on the healthcare system, but I was thinking, what if I had a healthcare emergency and there was no healthcare, or I didn't have a health policy, or I lived in a part of the world where healthcare was not good. And there are other examples too, not related to me, which I won't get into. But I think the resources are here. It's just individuals need to apply it. Education also makes a big difference. Information literacy makes a big difference. As people know, are aware that they can call this number or talk to this agency or health agency in order to be able to talk about a particular issue and then kind of go from there. So a lot of these things matter, but the thing is, this is not available in a big part of the world, and that is the opportunity to bring more hope and healing, because the technology should be deployed for these areas. As more healthy minds come online, then it increases the probability that the world's other problems are going to get solved. So let's make this happen. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I don't think you're going to be able to hit that document. And with that, I thank you for your time. And let's start a movement to enable healthcare facilities all over the world. All over the world. And this, I feel, could be a big, not that I'm sharing this, but this could be a big part of my vision to start a global policy for healthcare. I have other ideas on how this would happen on the policy side of things, with things like homomorphic encryption, machine learning itself, machine vision, transparency as well as patient records, who touched it, why, who authorized that, giving the patient the autonomy or the agency over their data, while still being able to run data analysis on the data through homomorphic encryption in order to do that. So I have ideas like this, but I'm putting this out there so that others may look at this from right now we're talking about the physical part of the institution, but I have other ideas with regards to house visits, which seem a little crazy right now, but I think it's totally possible with where technology is going. Other ideas, in addition to the idea that I shared about the shrinking tricorder, I have some other ideas there. And you also have to consider that aging could be reversed in the future. And I'm not talking like 500 years out. It could be, I don't know, I don't have a pulse on the anti-aging world, but it may be here within 10 years, maybe 20 years maximum. So that's a different world. So we need to think about how we provision our resources and have a keen focus on making sure that the basic needs of all the humans are met, because we want to create an equitable world. And so for these reasons and more, I'm sharing these thoughts and ideas. Collaboration is super welcome. Very easy to get a hold of on the internet. Thank you for watching. We will talk to you soon.